So welcome everyone to this Erno Lehtinen online colloquium that we have today. A special guest from Tallinn University, Kai Pata. So welcome. We have had quite many presentations so far, and today the schedule will be such that first I will give a little introduction of our dear presenter, and then she will give the presentation about 45 minutes, and then after that she and Erno will discuss together about the topic, and then we will have a little small group discussions in breakout rooms. If you don't wish to participate in these breakout rooms, you're free to jump off at that point, and whoever we are there, we will have a special joy to discuss with Kai and Erno about the topic of the day. So, and then we will, or actually Jake McMullen will wrap up and close the session. So that's the plan. So today our speaker is Kai Pata, Associate Professor from University of Tallinn, and we are going to hear about scaffolding in socio-technical systems, which is pretty exciting topic, I think, and it is something that very many of us in the research group that we are organizing this event or this series of celebrations for Erno's career. So this is very close to our hearts, I would say, these kinds of scaffolding ideas and also digital learning environments. So Professor Pata has defended her thesis, of which Erno has been a supervisor of 2005, so a while ago, and now she's an associate professor at the University of Tallinn. And with Erno's help, we got some words about how you are, and one hint about our presenter is in the picture. So I understood that you like gardening a little bit. I thought this was so nicely said that I decided to put it on the slide. So Kai is a wonderful colleague with interesting forward-looking ideas and visions. She loves nature, especially likes to wander around in different landscapes with her lovely and very smart daughter. She enjoys every moment and detail. Doesn't matter if it's raining hard, sun is shining, or snow is falling. Somehow this reminds of what I've heard from you about you, Kai, from Erno. She's also eager to grow plants, vegetables, and do gardening, and connections with Italy, and interested in Italian culture in addition to her own roots and history. So shall I leave it as a mystery, like who has been writing about you this way? All right, but dearly welcome. We are very happy to have you present today in ELOC event. So I let you start your presentation.
Okay, hello. My name is Kai. I'm a woman. And also I'm the student of Erno, as it was already said. And when I was contacted to come to talk in this colloquium, I was immediately thinking that, yes, I want to do it on the scaffolding topic, because that was my initial topic when I did my PhD studies. And some ways this has been like a line in all my research, a line of thinking. And so I'm going to talk you how this scaffolding metaphor some ways has changed in generally for me, because I think it's my opinion how it has changed, and especially when the technical and socio-technical systems have come to the play. And you will get a glimpse what I did meanwhile from 2005 until now. So how has scaffolding concept changed as learning moved from natural to digital mediated and hybrid forms? First of all, what is this scaffolding concept? When I did my PhD, it was quite a hot topic. Now I think I looked, it is not anymore so hot topic that is used so much in the research, but still, I think that first I would like to just to give a little overview of the different concepts that are around the support phenomena and what is the difference in these concepts and where does the scaffolding lay. That in the center I have put this kind of problem situation where usually we are as a learners and in which situations we would need the support. So if we think of these kind of situations, there we have this thing that we have to understand or develop. So that is this doing what and doing why. And then the problem very often is also that we don't know how we can do it. And in what are how the context will influence it and how we come to the best solution. So historically, there are different approaches to support. For example, there is an apprenticeship model that is this old model when you was working along the master, looking first what the master was doing, and then gradually the master gave you more and more tasks and faded off from this support. Then there is another concept of training. Training is this kind of support that is more directed to this, what is in the core of the activity, doing what, doing why. And then on the other hand, there are a lot of concepts that are related with support that is provided to doing, helping the learner or the group of learners to do something around how to solve these problems. For example, mentoring that is more personal relationship, a long time relationship in helping someone in doing the tasks, understanding how to conceptualize the activities. And then there is also this coaching concept that is more directed not even to the tasks, but to the personal development. And then there are two concepts that I had that are interrelated or used some ways in parallel is facilitation and scaffolding. These are such concepts that rather help the student not on the task, but how to conceptualize the task and go on with it. And then underneath you can see one of these emerging concepts that is more and more used also to guide or support people towards doing something, not forcing them. That is a nudging concept. So I want to focus on scaffolding. The scaffolding concept is quite old, and this picture describes what the scaffold is. The scaffold is something that the facilitator builds around the activity to help the student, but the scaffold is not always there, but as the student is going to work and understand how to go on, the scaffold is gradually removed. So the scaffold is not the core structure within the task. The scaffold is something that is put around and that can be gradually removed. And the scaffolding metaphor originates from duadic adult-child interactions and denotes that the grown-up or the teacher who knows more can help the child or novice to solve the problem or carry out the tasks that are beyond their unassisted efforts. And on the other hand, scaffolding is considered as a kind of like a relationship-related approach that focuses on the task, on the teacher, and on the learner. And I have put some of the aspects that relate with the scaffolding in dialogic actions, and later on I will look how it is changing in other kind of situations. So scaffolding is a process that should enable learners to solve the problem or carry out the task or to achieve the goal that are beyond their unassisted efforts. And it's not only related to this problem solving, but also with the learner. So we can see that what way the scaffolding should be provided is only as when it is needed. So it is not always there. And it should fade out of when it is no more needed. And what else is important is that although we think that the scaffolding concept is very much related in the books, for example, it is very much related with the zone of proximal development that Lev Vygotsky has coined already in the 30s of the last century. It was not actually, scaffolding was not the concept that Vygotsky was using. So, but they have been, these two concepts have been in some ways merged in the later stages when this metaphor of scaffolding was coined. So it related with this Vygotskian zone of proximal development. Scaffolding is happening in the zone of this where the teacher can help the student only when the teacher knows or understands something, how the student conceptualizes the problem. And in this case, the teacher can help the student who, although the student understands where is the problem, the student might not know how to arrive to the solution. So I have tried to divide the scaffolding concept into parts. For example, there is a 2T, the one who has a certain level of knowledge, skills, needs, attitudes, and then the 2T also should have a responsibility, ownership of their own learning. And they must also have a partial comprehension of the solution before they can solve it. On the other hand, the tutor should try to adjust to the 2T, and the tutor too should have certain kind of capabilities. For example, they should be able to model certain advanced solution paths. They should know what the level the 2T has. They also should have some empathic competencies, understanding what the 2T needs and adjusting always to this. And so what the tutor should be doing is trying to work on the goal orientation and also trying to focus on these task features and maybe simplifying there some steps. and maybe also reducing the tutees' degrees of freedom. When we look at the scaffolding process, what is interesting in this is that it is a process of interaction. And in this process of interaction, both of the tutor and the tutee must be actively involved into some kind of turn-taking. And this turn-taking is in the core of scaffolding, that scaffolding interactions. That in this turn-taking, what is developed is a mutual understanding between them. So scaffolding is a negotiation process. And in this process, not the task completion is important, but creating this common ground in understanding between the tutee and the tutor about what the task is and what could be the steps to solve it. What is also important is that there should be this internalization evoked. The work in the scaffolding process is to create like a similar understanding what is the task and how to solve it. And of course, this process should be faded out when the scaffolding is no more needed. The other, what is also important part is this context where scaffolding happens, scaffolding situations. So the scaffolding situation is not only this dual situation between the teacher and the learner, but it may be also situated in the particular communities or organizational contexts. And it provides this background in which the tutee and the tutor too would interpret their communal moves in this activity context. This scaffolding situation should provide like a goal-embedded motivation, and it is important that there is this active engagement, also affective engagement and interpersonal exchange in these tasks. So when I was doing my research in the beginning, I had chat, it was in 2000, in the beginning of 2000s, that I had done quite a lot of online chats on decision making that were group situations in which I was and some of my colleagues were acting as tutors. And I conceptualized then the scaffolding concept into the group situations. So of course, it does not have to be so that only there is a tutor and the students, but the students in between them, basically in all the group members can scaffold each other because they have their strengths in different things. And also the scaffolding acts that the teacher or also the group members may be using are not so particular acts that belong only to the teachers. So it is possible to look at scaffolding as some kind of communication acts, a mutual scaffolding that happens in the groups. And in this process, the participants develop and test out their constructions of meaning with others and discuss the interpretations and possible solutions and provide this zone of proximal development to each other. So in my studies, in order to understand what is happening there in my group chats, I started to look what type of scaffolding acts there are. There were several different frameworks, and in my study, I merged this framework together. In this figure, you can see one of the figures that I had in my PhD study that shows the dialogic acts in scaffolding. In one hand, there are two types of acts that might be like an obligation type of acts when someone is commanding something, or less persuasive type of acts that are rather intentions. And always these acts are replied by someone. In my case, it was by someone in the group is answering to these acts. So this is this actor 2. And the replies, of course, come from how the other person is interpreting what this obligation or intention is. So scaffolding situations are like a semiotic uptakes in which there has to happen this appropriation of meanings. And if you look at the schema, you can see that on top of this line, you can see the so-called positive acts. And on the bottom, there are rather this kind of rejecting type of acts. And these acts that are more on the left side are shorter acts. And usually these are this type of acts, accepting or rejecting, that abruptly stop the grounding, so that there is no discussion between these two actors, and then there has to come another start act. Then there are some type of scaffolding acts that people partly accept or partly not with what was said. And this creates some more discussions around that. Some of the acts are such kinds that they partly adopt the view, but not fully. This is also a positive type of act. Or especially in tutoring, sometimes there are such acts that the tutor or the one who is acting as a tutor is displacing the acts with something different, or is indicating that there is a mistake. So all these kinds of acts are good for initiating grounding, a common ground, and in the end, there should be some better understanding what both people mean. Below you can see one of the studies that I did as part of my PhD, it came out that it is important that the tutor was quite active in this kind of turn taking, that this promoted more the grounding than the passive tutoring. There was also another study that I did. I was looking what is the effect if there are different scaffolders. It is clear that the students themselves also provide some of the scaffolding. And this figure that you can see here shows that when the tutor was very directly supporting students' decision-making, in some ways hindered the students' scaffolding acts. And on the other hand, when the tutor was scaffolding, that the peers would scaffold themselves, that was promoting also this decision-making. So there is a competition, and we always have to think as the teachers in the groups not to be too much active. What else was, so basically there is a zone of proximal development in between these different counterparts in these groups. Okay, now when already in my studies I had technology mediated scaffolding. So what this technology was doing. For example, in real time, there was a possibility to keep the chat logs or monitor this chat log while it was going on. That also acted as a scaffold. This is this type of scaffold that where we have to follow the dynamic signals for mutual interaction. Such like birds in the flocks, for example, have to follow, have to be always there. Then there are also this type of support that technology provides always from this scaffolding interactions. Some artifacts are left, such as log files, or some production history that can be repeated. And these can be accumulated into the systems. These are two communication acts. We don't have to think that this kind of communication acts are only in between people, but very often we offload them somewhere in the environment as a signals, and then we use these signals in the environment. And the good thing in technical systems is that this accumulation some ways can be reused. So scaffolding acts may form in learning environments new kind of knowledge constructions that are, for example, a collection of practices or collection of ideas, or there are also such that we cannot put into some artifacts, but they are still there, such as trust. And I believe that that this scaffolding that is happening in socio-technical, in the digital systems, is not only directed to the persons who are part of this learning, but they are more and more also directed to the collective level phenomena. So the scaffolding, in my opinion, directs this these phenomena as well. And of course, they are mutually interrelated, these knowledge knowledge and other skills or values that are created at the personal level and that are created at the collective level. So here is one of the studies that we did in professional networks of medicine people, and also we looked the people from construction sector. And you can see that what we did, we took the asynchronous forum discussions, and we looked what kind of interactions there are. So I was taking something from my previous study in the scaffolding, and we created the list of what kind of actions there actually are in these systems. So you can see that we had, for example, types of actions like sharing information or requesting for information or validating some persons or validating with the information and so on. And we also had thinking that it comes from Dave Jonassen, that there are different types of problems, simple problems such as rule using problems, and more complex problems such as design problems or reasoning problems. And we wanted to see whether this pattern is different. And we also wanted to see what way these practice communities are supporting its members. The figure that we created, and we used the social network analysis for visualizing it, and then we created like a generalization model on top of that. So here you can see this nice flower, but it's not a flower, but it shows different types, how scaffolding happens in the systems. And the claim is that some of the scaffolding elements are actually provided by the system, or the system has such functionalities that people can activate. For example, in the systems, we can rate or put the likes or the stars to the content and to the people. And this is accumulating in the systems. And you can also see that in these practice communities, there are activities that happen within these technical systems where they discuss, but there are also validation acts that happen externally. So people have to validate things in practice and bring the things that they have experienced in practice for the validation into the networks. Also, there is one part that also happens in the communities is that some of the knowledge has to grow or become more normative for the communities. That is this loop of creating, maturing the knowledge that also requires validations. So these validation acts are in the center of scaffolding. So I also was putting here some of the, just to think some of the figures that now that we have more and more technical possibilities to replace humans, such as with a chatbot or artificial intelligence based chatbots, that can we say that these chatbots are scaffolding people? For example, I was thinking that what is very important is that scaffolding is not helping to solve the problem, like giving the content how to solve the problem, but rather it should support the person in understanding what the problem is and helping in the steps of solving the problem. So it is very important that these machine learning algorithms would, in one hand, elicit also what is the user's incomplete problem model. And then on the other hand, they should also try to fit it with accumulated experts models. And then this chatbot should be also able to fade out of support. I don't know, I am not very keen in working with chatbots. I mean, as a teacher. So I haven't experienced whether there are such chatbots that are able of doing all these three things. The other that I have actually experienced in some of the projects is the scaffolding that can be provided with the recommendation engines. Again, can we say that the recommendation engine is able to provide the scaffold? If we think that what is usually happening is that the algorithm is learning what I am doing, and then it is suggesting me some examples that come from similar to me persons' solutions. But I think that instead of recommending concrete examples, this system should suggest me some kind of prototypical ways of how to solve the problem, or some kind of rule sets, or even show me some prototypes. So on the other hand, I was also wondering that it is very important that I am not getting always the good solutions. I should also get the bad solutions. And whether the recommendation system can fade out of support is also the question. I have also played, because I am a biologist, and in one point, this ecosystem approach, and also the understanding that the cognition is some ways induced by what is in the environment, from the environmental affordances, what are there. And at the same time, we are ourselves also creating these affordances when we act. This became very important for me in my thinking. And in some of the studies, I was trying to look at how this kind of niches that people create in their collective behaviors, in the activities, whether these niches can be some ways visualized to the people, and whether this is supporting them. Here you can see one of the studies that where we asked from people that did individual tasks, and after that they did collaborative tasks with social media. We asked how they conceptualized these tools that they used. And it's very simplistic way of showing the niches as vector spaces, but they are collective spaces where we can see how many people understand a certain affordances of the tools. And you can see that there are some differences, how people perceived the same tools when the context changed. Then, now that I have been, for a while I was teaching the students of governance, who have to create the systems, socio-technical systems that provide different kind of societal services to the people. I started to explore more and more this kind of socio-technical systems that are around us, partly in the real life and partly in the digital life and in the blended mode, and exploring what is scaffolding in this type of socio-technical systems. And I have taken this niche thinking further, together with some of my colleagues, Emanuele Bardone from Tartu, for example. And we were trying to understand, here you can see like this three circle figure in which we try to show how the people are some ways embedded to this collective niches where they are acting. And at the same time, when they act, that is this middle level, they are also noticing their own acts, or maybe not noticing, maybe it is implicitly. They are learning from what they are doing. So here you can see these 3 levels: agent level learning, actions, and then this is embedded into the system level learning. And the system also is learning. So I have used this 2 niches, this cognitive niche and cultural niche figure for guiding my students to look at socio-technical systems. And here is one of the systems that you can experience in Tallinn, also in my area. That is Starship robots that bring the food. And what I'm trying to illustrate here is that this scaffolding that is happening is not only between these 2 agents. In this case, the 2 agencies, one is the human and the other is the robot, when they are interacting to get the food or to get understanding the interactions in the environment. But there are also some of the things that have to be like a scaffolded as well, that happen in the cultural level, such as, for example, if you look below, you can see that also the systems learn. They learn regarding accessibility. And there are also some of the phenomena that are developed actually from this interaction at the system level, such as mutual trust between these human and non-human agents, and also maybe safety. And so can we apply scaffolding concept to support also the emergence of the collective level phenomena is one of the questions. Here you can see my daughter that was mentioned in front of my house. And also with the students, we were wondering that what is actually the purpose of all these little robots on the streets? It is not that we need this food very much, but we think that there is this big social experiment that tries to elicit the discourse acts for mutual situation definitions, and maybe the intentions and values between humans and non-human agents. That maybe this is that is created in the end. Okay, and also this nudge concept. So nudge is any aspect of the choice architecture that may alter people's behavior in some ways, but it is such a kind of act that is not forced on them, so that there is a choice that the people can make whether to follow this nudge or not to follow this nudge. And here I found also one quite recent paper of different types of educational nudges, for example, reminders or informational nudges or social belonging nudges. So we can also think that whether this nudge is a scaffold, can it be a scaffold? I was thinking that reciprocal validation acts should be implemented as part of nudges so that we can call them the scaffolding acts. Because otherwise, maybe if there is not this reciprocity and creating the common ground, maybe they are not as scaffolds. Okay, here is this big picture to come to the end. That it's the same figure on the flipped way. That I think that scaffolding eventually can be found in quite many places. For example, if we start from this place where people have problems, then there has to be some kind of scaffolding that helps the people to be aware of what is in this collective niche of the cultural niche, or in some other cultural niches that we try to embed them into. Then the scaffolding should happen also on the level of when people try to appropriate what is available in the cultural niche, or what the cultural niche is some ways forcing them to do. They might be reusing these ideas or practices or values that are there, and sometimes they cannot do by themselves. They need to request for help, and this is this kind of dyadic interaction that humans or the bots can provide. Then sometimes it is also necessary to have also the scaffolding, maybe by technical means that supports sense making, so that we will notice, collect and notice this kind of new events that happen around us, and that we can bring them into this collective level. Then scaffolding in groups is also at present, when the groups have to actually validate these new things that people discover, either the new values or ideas or the practices that are entering into the cultural level. And but besides that, these systems that are empowered technically with artificial intelligence, they are also able to promote this kind of co-creation that is self-organized. And there too, validation acts are necessary. These technologically mediated validation acts, when we accept something or like something or use many times something. So there is scaffolding, on my opinion, on this kind of self-organization level that promotes knowledge maturing. And by knowledge, I mean here all kinds of things, starting from values, ideas, and so on. Okay, here is the same thing on a different way in a paper. Maybe I will not elaborate that. But my big question is, actually, I'm not sure whether it is so or not, that can we actually use the scaffolding concept this way, as I was trying to use it in this presentation? This is the question to you for the discussion, and maybe this is something that we can also discuss with Erno.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kai, for very interesting reflection of the concept. At that time, when you made your doctoral studies in Turku, as you mentioned, it was a hot topic, and it was there already in international discussion during the 90s, and was quite actively used. But one interesting question is that why it has disappeared. Is it so that people are looking more simple solutions? Because as we have seen now in your presentation, scaffolding is not a simple concept, but require kind of many features of the interaction process before we can call it scaffold in the original sense. But what is your explanation why it has disappeared? Not completely disappeared, but it's not hot topic anymore.
Yeah, I think that all the concepts in education, they come and they become buzzwords, and then they decline, and then they are rediscovered. And it is currently in a bit going down, but maybe and some other concepts are going up, like this nudging, for example. Or
yes. So yes, I think that that's true for many concepts, that there are certain kind of period when it was very widely used, and then it's disappearing, and something similar comes later on, maybe with the same name, maybe with another name. But one problem I have noticed with many concepts, and scaffolding is one of them, that when it becomes very kind of popular, people start to use it for almost anything. Scaffolding is one of those, community of practices, another type of them, so that they are in a way too attractive, and then people start to use them in a way that the original meaning is disappearing, and then they become they are not anymore so interesting, because they do not. People try to explain everything with them, but they are not anymore explaining anything because of that. So that's what I'm afraid that has a little bit happens for the scaffolding concept as well.
Yes, you are right. But I think the other thing is that scaffolding is like a metaphor. And then some people go and look what way the metaphor and the process that the metaphor tries to convey into this other situation, what is there, what is the core of it. But others use it just like a label.
Yes,
I think it is the same way with for example, with the word of ecology or ecosystem. How many ecologies we are seeing now appearing everywhere, and ecosystems.
Sure. But, yes,
most of them are not looking at them in taking the real ecosystem principles and then doing this abductive thinking into the new system, where where the metaphor really starts to work.
Yes, that's a very good example. So that of course, you as a biologist understand it much better than I do, but I clearly believe that the ecosystem is one of these kind of concepts which have the problems. But when technology was so original, of course, scaffolding was developed in the way so that it described certain type of interaction between teacher and student, or more advanced person and the learner. And then, as I mentioned, it became very attractive. People started to use it also in technological environments. And one problem I noticed in those early studies where scaffolding was used was that it really was just a label, and basically it was almost the same as this kind of feedback systems or some kind of quasi-adaptive systems in old learning machines of Skinner or things like that, or systems like that. So that's was probably one of the reasons why people became a little bit careful by using the system, because it has had misused so much. But personally, I do believe that it's extremely important concept, and historically it had very important meaning, because it in a way solved a kind of very general level pedagogical problem, and it was the huge gap which was between traditional direct teaching and then new ideas based on constructivist ideas. So my colleague in Switzerland, Kurt Neusser, used the term romantic constructivism to describe this kind of unrealistic beliefs that if we have nice environments with a lot of opportunities, then students learn there themselves. And this gap was so huge that scaffolding concept was in a way, in its original meaning, way to understand that the teacher's role is not disappearing, or the more advanced person's role in dealing with hard concepts, that it really can do that job if we understand all these features. And you described them very nicely, what is required from that concept, that it really can be a kind of meaningful concept to describe this productive interaction between teachers and students. But now your new development attempt to move this concept to another type of environment from this dyadic situation between the teacher and student is interesting but challenging on the same time. But because sometimes this kind of, as you mentioned, when we move a metaphor from one context to another, it is a kind of useful, but it also can have can be also dangerous development. But basically, I see a lot of interesting opportunities in the way how you have started to use. But now the question is that are there enough features of the original scaffolding concept that it's wise to use the term scaffolding, or should we use some other term to describe this very interesting and important phenomenon described?
For example, if you think that I haven't actually published it like this. I did it like for this presentation.
Yes.
But I have been thinking of this, and particularly if we think that scaffolding is between agents, but in this kind of ecological thinking, also the system is a kind of agent. And so it can happen that I'm actually supporting the system, and there are the mutual interactions between me and this, let's say, cultural level, or this cultural niche that I'm creating. But what you said is that the scaffolding is, there is this need that one is on more advanced level than the other. And I started to think now, when you said it, that whether, although there is interaction between me and this cultural niche, whether it's who is more advanced.
Yes, and in what?
What?
Yes. That's interesting, an important question for that. And the other question I think is that if we think the original scaffolding, it's very intentional, so that the goal-oriented activity from the teacher or the tutor, what she's doing. But when we go to the kind of systemic processes, are they intentional, or are they just something which are emerging processes?
Okay, but is artificial intelligence intentionally doing something?
No. So
is the intention actually is the intelligence itself that like appears there?
Yes, yes.
So I think that there is an intentionality, collective intentionality in it. That for example, when you are searching something,
yes,
you are getting the results of good results or searches of many other people, basically, or the system that is, let's say, if it is a system that collects the ideas, or the system that collects practices, it is providing you these practices that have been like selected some ways by the group that has considered them potentially useful.
yes.
So of course, this usefulness is a ratio,
yes.
but we don't know
yes.
whether they were useful or whether they wasn't useful.
Yes, and of course, this is the feature of the algorithms, but this is can we see there this kind of scaffolding intention?
I think there is the intention. Nudges are intentional. Everything what this kind of niches that are provided to us by the recommendation engine, there is intentionality in it.
So
because they are for example, they show you these results that most of the community have liked.
Sure, but
or some
but this,
of results.
Yes, but of course, this is a very different way to conceptualize intentionality than the traditional ones. But because the person or the persons who are developed the algorithms, they had certain intentions, for example, commercial intentions or something for creating this particularly certain type of algorithms. But is there the algorithms working in this way? Is it intentional in the same way as a human tutor, scaffolding, a learner? That's okay.
This is the question, I think, that has to be some ways tested out, that or whether this intention that comes from the system side can actually adjust to the person.
Sure.
Whether they can, to what extent it is able to capture what is my understanding, and is there some kind of meaning making happening between me and the system now? So, but I think that the more we move in this artificial intelligence, this is more and more reality.
Yes, and of course nowadays we are aware of these unintentional consequences of the system, so that they were some of the consequences were not originally planned into when the people created the algorithms, but then they started to work in that way that created all kind of crazy or even dangerous social phenomena, and then yes, that raised the question that when we think the concept of scaffolding, is it always something which is aiming good, or
no?
Is it whatever?
If we even if you are a teacher, you may aim good, but eventually it appears that you have developed wrong things and wrong abilities maybe in people.
Yes, but that's so again can be a kind of
this is this responsibility issue. I think that
yes.
That in this original features of what scaffolding is that the learner takes responsibility and the tutor takes responsibility in something. That maybe this is happening also at the level when the interaction becomes between me and the system as a collective me.
Sure. And now, when in your way, how you describe this scaffolding in the systemic processes, there was the idea that also the system is changing, so that in this process. But how it was in the original scaffolding concept? Was it different from traditional teaching idea? The teacher already has all the knowledge and then it's teaching, but
I think that it's different, that in the tutoring, the tutor, there was this picture that the tutor puts in my head everything, but in this scaffolding, the teacher has to adjust the problem conceptualization together with the student.
So this is the question for us, right? Why is scaffolding concept still useful in socio-technical systems?
So you can also remove the word why. Is scaffolding concept still useful? And why helps you to just to elaborate whether it is or not.
Yeah, all right. That sounds like a plan. So Erno is back.
Yes, I'm back. So that it seems that my network went down.
No problem. We just decided that maybe we can jump into the breakout room discussions.
Yes, good.
Now, Jake, have you made the rooms or shall I make them?
I haven't made them. So.
Okay, so so I can do it. I'm just checking that we have a Jake and Tommy, I'm going to put you into new rooms, so don't go into your room yet. Everyone else, see you on the other side. Tommy, yeah.
Mainly about
this meeting is being recorded.
Oh, sorry.
Jake, I let you to finalize this session. Thank you, Kai. Thank you, Erno, for your discussions.
Yeah, thank you, Kai and Erno. Kai, it was really a really eye-opening and challenging topic, and so that's I really appreciate that, because we really spent a lot of time in our session asking questions and trying to think about the answers to them in a way that yeah, we kind of trying to open them up and think about them and apply them, and I really appreciated that, because you know, we can see the kind of possibilities to apply these ideas in new ways, and that's not always a simple process of opening that up for others. And so it was really inspiring for you to open that up for us. And yeah, I have questions for you that I'll have to dig into it, but some specific ones, but I won't bother everyone else with them now. But yeah, I think that this was really helpful for us also in thinking about these concepts that I think we were just discussing that we use these every day in kind of our, the idea of scaffolding, I think, is quite inherent to a lot of how we design instruction or think about learning and think about instruction. And so to kind of get a new, fresh perspective on them was really valuable for us. So thanks for that. Yeah, and we have a next series, the next sessions in our series are coming up, and you can find out more information about those on the web pages. So yeah, and with that, I'll say thank you everyone for coming. Thanks again, Kai. Thanks, Erno,
Yes.
and Nina.
Okay. Yes, thank you. So thank you very much, Kai.
Thank you very much
very
for
much enjoy.
again.
Yes.